That morning, Margaret Parker realized she couldn't open a jar of pickles anymore. She sat at her kitchen table and stared at it for nearly 10 minutes. The jar wasn't the real problem. She knew that there was a big problem. Margaret was 74 years old. The hands that had once done everything now struggled with simple tasks. Those same hands had baked bread every Sunday for decades. They had planted flowers every spring. They had held her husband Robert's hand through hospital stays, surgeries, and finally his last quiet night in hospice. Now they shook a little when she poured coffee. Now they hurt when rain was coming. Now they couldn't open a simple jar. She finally pushed it aside. The kitchen felt quiet, too quiet. She carried her coffee to the window and looked outside at the bird feeder hanging from the old oak tree in the backyard. A pair of sparrows hopped around the feeder. A bright red cardinal landed on the branch above them. The cardinal came every morning. Margaret often joked to herself that he seemed like a busy businessman heading to work. She smiled for a moment. Then the smile faded. 3 years. 3 years since Robert had died. 3 years of eating alone. 3 years of talking to photographs. 3 years of hearing nothing but the creaks and groans of an aging house after dark. Her daughter Emily lived in Denver. Her son Michael lived outside Seattle. They called most weeks. Sometimes they forgot. Sometimes life got busy. Margaret never blamed them. They had jobs, families, responsibilities. Still, a phone call wasn't the same as having someone in the room. The house on Maple Creek Drive had once felt full of life. Now it felt too large. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a backyard she could no longer maintain. The flower beds were beginning to look messy. Leaves collected in the gutters. A step on the back porch wobbled every time she used it. Every few months, Michael flew in and spent a weekend fixing things. He'd repair 3 or 4 problems, hug him goodbye, and disappear back into his own life. Emily mailed money when she thought her mother needed help. Margaret appreciated it, but money couldn't mow the lawn. Money couldn't sit across the table and share breakfast. Money couldn't make an empty house feel less empty. At night, loneliness seemed to spread through every room. Margaret had never been good at asking for help. She grew up believing people should handle their own problems. If something broke, you fixed it. If life became difficult, you pushed through it. That was how she'd lived for more than 70 years. Even when Robert was alive, she rarely leaned on him as much as she should have. After he died, she often found herself wishing she had shared more of her fears with him, wishing she had said certain things out loud, wishing she had allowed herself to need someone. The pickle jar wasn't the only sign. Her hip had started bothering her. Some mornings she gripped the banister while climbing stairs. And there had been the kettle incident. She hadn't told Emily or Michael about that. 3 months earlier, she'd put water on to boil and wandered into the garden. A few minutes turned into 20. When she returned, steam filled the kitchen. The smoke detector screamed. Her heart pounded so hard she had to sit on the floor afterward. That scared her, more than she wanted to admit. So when Emily carefully brought up the idea of hiring someone to live with her and help around the house, Margaret didn't immediately reject it. Normally she would have. Instead, she said, "Let me think about it." The word surprised both of them. Thinking about it wasn't easy, because accepting help felt a lot like admitting she was getting older, and that was a truth she wasn't ready to face. Sarah Mitchell arrived on a cool Tuesday morning in March. The first signs of spring were showing. Small green shoots poked through flower beds. The air smelled like damp earth and fresh rain. Sarah was 41. She had brown hair pulled into a neat bun and kind eyes that made people feel comfortable almost immediately. She came through a caregiving agency called Helping Hands Senior Care. The company had decent reviews. The references checked out. Emily had spoken to 2 former clients. Everything seemed fine. The first thing Margaret noticed was Sarah's voice. Calm, steady, never rushed. The kind of voice that made you feel like you had all the time in the world. They sat together at the kitchen table, drinking coffee. Sarah smiled. "Tell me about yourself," she said. "What do your days usually look like?" Margaret expected the conversation to last 10 minutes. Instead, she talked for almost an hour. She talked about Robert, about gardening, about her children, about her arthritis, about the cardinal who visited every morning. Sarah listened, really listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't pretend to understand things she hadn't experienced. She simply paid attention. When Margaret finally finished, Sarah smiled. "I'm not here to take over your life. I'm here to make your life easier." For the first time in months, Margaret felt hopeful. Maybe this could work. Maybe she didn't have to do everything alone anymore. A week later, Michael visited. He helped carry Sarah's belongings into the guest room. Later that evening, he stood quietly in the kitchen doorway. His mother and Sarah were sitting at the table, laughing about some television show. Margaret looked relaxed, happy, healthier than she had in months. Something inside Michael loosened, a knot he'd been carrying since his father's death. On the drive back to the airport, he called Emily. "I think this was the right decision," he said. "Really?" "Yeah." He smiled. "I think Mom likes her." Emily let out a long breath. Thank goodness. Neither of them realized they were feeling the same thing. Relief. The relief that comes when you've been carrying a heavy burden and finally believe someone else is helping hold it. Neither noticed that they had started trusting Sarah almost immediately, and neither knew how important that trust would become. The first changes were easy to miss. In fact, that was what made them dangerous. Nothing happened all at once. Nothing felt wrong at first. Everything seemed reasonable. Sarah had been living with Margaret for about 2 months when she brought up the household bills. They were sitting at the kitchen table one evening after dinner. Margaret was rubbing her aching hands while sorting through a stack of envelopes. Sarah watched for a moment. "You know," she said gently, "I could help with all that." Margaret looked up. "The bills?" Sarah nodded. "Groceries, utilities, online payments. It might take some stress off your shoulders." Margaret hesitated. She hated paperwork. She hated trying to remember due dates. Twice that year she'd forgotten to pay the water bill on time. Maybe Sarah had a point. "I suppose that wouldn't hurt." Sarah smiled. "Only if you're comfortable with it." A week later, Margaret gave Sarah access to the household accounts, just for emergencies, just in case. At least that was how they described it. The bank employee helping them seemed distracted. Margaret signed forms without reading every line. Her reading glasses were buried somewhere in her purse, and she didn't want to hold everyone up. Life moved on. The grocery bills slowly became larger. Sarah explained that she was buying healthier food, less sodium, better ingredients. Margaret's doctor would approve. That sounded reasonable. Everything cost more these days anyway. Gas, food, medicine. Why would groceries be any different? Around the same time, Sarah began answering the phone more often. She said she was helping Margaret rest. "You need your naps," she would remind her. Margaret never used to nap, but lately she often felt tired by afternoon, so she allowed Sarah to handle incoming calls. At first it seemed helpful. Then Emily called unexpectedly one Wednesday afternoon. Sarah answered. Margaret didn't hear about the call until later that evening. "Your daughter called while you were resting. I told her you'd call back when you felt up to it." When you felt up to it. The phrase settled into Margaret's mind. It sounded caring, thoughtful, protective. The next morning she called Emily back. The conversation was pleasant, but somehow shorter than usual. The connection felt thinner, as if something small had been interrupted. The same thing happened with Michael. One Sunday he called during Margaret's nap. Sarah answered. "She's had a rough week," she told him. "Honestly, she needs the sleep." Michael felt guilty. Of course, he didn't want to disturb his mother. He promised to call again soon.